All right, welcome to Starting Five here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. You can follow us and make sure you subscribe and like the channel. Also, check out Five on the Floor. Got a new episode up from last night. We went into kind of how the Heat started to follow the blueprint. So when everything changed here. Look at that. Greg's got the new shirt here. We'll take some of your comments here today. We got Manny Chang producing. I got Brady Hawk with me. Follow me at Brady Hawk 305. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. The one thing we did not do much last night is kind of get into matchup changes tonight and everything that may happen between Erik Spoelstra and Tom Thibodeau. So we're going to do that here on the show. We are sponsored, as we usually are here on Starting Five, by All Pro Construction Builders. Check them out at allproconstructionbuilders.com. That's our friend Danny. Quality is their specialty. Here's the key thing here. We know the storms are coming. They always are in August and September. Everybody starts rushing to the store, but they also start trying to say, well, wait a second. We didn't protect our house. We didn't protect our place of business. Well, you can do that through All Pro Construction Builders and get you the storm windows and doors down here in South Florida. You get 10% off your entire order. If you mention Five Reasons, the phone number is 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. You can find them at allproconstructionbuilders.com. They're based in Dade County, but they also service Monroe and Broward counties as well. And it's not just the storm windows, too. They can do the renovations on your house and everything else that comes along the way. They're state certified, and they use local products all the time. So go to allproconstructionbuilders.com. Reach out to our guy, Danny. I'm sure I'll get a bunch of texts from him during the game tonight trying to figure out why Spoelstra is doing this or that. No, he's not one of those, actually. I got a lot of those, but he's one of those just sort of projecting whether they're going to win or not tonight. So we'll get into that here at the end. But Brady, I want to start with you because you gave away the entire game plan, obviously, with Erik Spoelstra. Although of all the times for him to kind of come back at you, that was a weird one because, I mean, you've literally deep dived on everything that they're going to do in the future usually and are typically right. This time you were just basically saying that he had changed a matchup early in the game, right? Like going with Butler on Barrett and going with Vincent on Brunson, which was a change from the previous couple games. So do you think, let's start here because we know that all those guys are playing tonight. Do you think that he will stick with that change? Or do you think now that you've foiled their entire plan that he's going to go with something different?
I think they go with something different, but it's not because of what I said. We keep talking about playoff Jimmy, but what about playoff Spo? Like we keep bringing up these playoff elements where it's like, you start in game one where you have the element that they did all season where they put Gabe on Barrett, Jimmy on Brunson, and they basically say let's make RJ beat us. Like they said it all year. He went to him early. They got going early. They still end up winning. You go to game two. They have no Jimmy. So what do they say? We're going to go zone basically the entire game. And then you go to game three, and they use something different again. They say, well, we're going to, instead of putting Jimmy on Brunson, we're going to put Gabe on Brunson and let Jimmy just help off RJ because we want RJ to be a spot-up shooter. That's what we want him to be. And I kind of feel like they go back to the game one project in a sense because New York is going to they got stumbled in game three. I thought their plan as always is to get RJ going early in the game and then they can work out of stuff from there. The Heat cut off the head of the snake in game three and right out the gate, and I don't think they ever caught up from that. Game four now they're adjusting and they're probably saying we're going to get Brunson going in the early goings of this game. They're not going to go to RJ. I think they switch it back, and I think they probably go Jimmy on Brunson maybe tonight. And they put Gabe on RJ, and then they're force feeding RJ in a way to kind of get them out of whack in a way. But there's other adjustments probably coming too. They might mix in some zone here or there, just much less than game two. There's probably minor details that we'll see that'll shift. But the one constant I feel like is just that Bam's been dominant defensively in this series. As much as we focus on his non-aggressiveness and all that type of stuff that we've seen, the defense has been dominant, and he's been the anchor. And Spo's that's been the one constant. He's kept him in the role where he's able to slow down Randall in a way. And he's able to kind of hold everybody else around the rim. So that's going to stay the same, but I do think they actually go back to some of the game one things that they did.
All right, to that end, Greg, who's the important player for the Knicks tonight? Because I keep kind of going back and forth on this. Because, I mean, Brunson was their engine in the Cleveland series by far. But Randall is the variance player.
Correct.
Right? And the variance has typically been bad in the playoffs, or at least compared to the regular season. But he did have a game in Miami earlier this year where he was a factor. You got to figure the ankle's getting a little bit better, right? So I mean Barrett, it feels like they don't care about RJ. Like
Yeah.
Brady's talked about that all series. So is it Randall really? Because it almost feels like Brunson can get 30, but I don't know that that's going to have a big effect here.
You're right, because this is where we're at. They need somebody to play above their head, somebody. And when you look around that roster, who can really play above their head? I think Julius Randle is the one guy who conceivably, if he had 38 and 10, people wouldn't say, oh, he's never done that before in his entire career. You know what I'm saying? So, he's capable of it, even if it's not necessarily the most efficient version of himself. I think that he's the guy that is the wild card because New York relies on a lot of one-on-one stuff. The more I watch this series, I'm like, they don't really run great offense, in my opinion.
Well, they're a Tibbs team. Like this is the thing. Like this gets back to, if you go all the way back to the Chicago teams that played Miami, which I mean
they got stifled because they didn't run offense. Yeah,
right. You could argue that was a better Miami team, but that was a better team that Tibbs had to coach. I mean, the first year, Jimmy hadn't been drafted yet, the first year. But when they played each other in the playoffs in the 11 playoffs, he had Luol Deng. He had a hub of the offense in Noah, who, although he was limited offensively, he was a very good passer. You could run a ton of stuff through him. I mean, he had freaking Derrick Rose, like not the Derrick Rose that we may see in a spot role tonight, right?
So, Heinrich too.
Yeah, Heinrich. I mean, he had good. I mean, and that bench he had was really good. He had C.J. Watson. I don't know. I think that, to me, this is a less talented version of that team.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a Tibbs team, which means that ultimately you can flatten them out offensively. And that 86 points is insane. Like in this era.
And I'll pass the ball back to you here, but I just want to mention this. They held the top 3 Knicks guys. That's RJ Barrett, Jalen Brunson, and who am I missing? Julius Randle, as we've been talking about. I think it was to 45 or 44 points in game 3. Like, they need those guys to get in upwards of 80 for this to even be like
they did
contest.
They did in game 2. They did
exactly. There you go. So
there was
that's
no Jimmy Butler.
What to watch.
All right, so let's go to the other side of this then, Brady. With Jimmy. Tibbs obviously knows Jimmy. He drafted Jimmy, or he's with him when they drafted Jimmy. But you don't typically, I mean, the doubles with Jimmy have kind of come and gone depending on who the coach is. Tibbs is doing it, but it seems like he's doing it reluctantly.
Because I said it before this series. I said it. I remember we did a poll podcast. Or like, what if Jimmy gets doubled? Like the Milwaukee wouldn't double him, but like, what if he does get doubled and they take him out of the game plan? And the first thing I said is Jimmy won't care about your double team because if you blitz him on the perimeter, he can get out of it. like that does nothing. Jimmy's whole game plan is get to the basket. So if you blitz him out, that doesn't do anything. What you can do is when you start doubling him on the low block or mid post. But what we've learned there is that doesn't matter either. It seems like then he'll just go and fly into baseline step backs like he was doing last game. And the Knicks are like, okay, we'll shed help down low, but we're not going to full out send doubles because it really doesn't matter. And he's made the passes. The Heat's role players are shooting well. If I'm the other team, I'm probably keep making that dare, like keep making Miami shoot well and then probably getting the ball to Jimmy's hands. But it's not like every time they double him, Jimmy just giving the ball up. He's still getting to his spots and getting shots up. So it's like, it's a weird scenario. It was one play I pointed out on Twitter where they ran like a horn set. He went to his left. They blitzed out. He went back to his right. They blitzed out again. He just went around Randall, went to the basket, and ended up scoring anyway. They blitzed him twice on the same action. It's like, I don't know what you do with him. The guy is just playing at an extremely high level. He's confident. He's every bucket. He's trash talking his own defender. Like it's just like I don't think schematics like matter with this guy right now. Like he is just playing at an incredible level. That it's more so the schematics on the guys around him. Like that the other guys are in the right spots. The other guys are moving into around the half court well. But for Jimmy, it's like I don't know what you do, and especially tonight at home where like he knows that things gonna get a little. If the Knicks grab this one, it's 2-2. Now it's a little interesting. He knows they have to get this one, so this is why I think. And you're at home. I think he's probably gonna come out with some fire again.
He's just completely unbothered. I mean,
that's what unfazed was the word I was gonna try to sneak in there, and you beat me. Thank you.
He's just totally. I mean, he's posting Instagram
He's like,
stories of his spa day yesterday. Like
He's dancing on the court mid game. Like,
yeah, exactly. They're
It
like
really is
there's a
ridiculous.
dust up and people are upset, and he's like going, ha ha ha.
Right.
Like,
I mean, you know how irritating that has to be for the Knicks. Like Tibbs, I mean, you know the way Tibbs is, right? And he's sitting there, I got this plan, and then Jimmy's like, whatever. I mean, against his old coach. I mean, I'm watching some of this. I mean, not just his old coach in one place, his old coach in two places who respects him enough that he traded for him. I mean, that was the centerpiece trade in Minnesota. Even if it didn't end up working out there because Jimmy basically took a bunch. Jimmy didn't like that they wouldn't pay me. Okay, and if you saw the Jeff Teague video about what actually happened in that practice video or in that practice in Minnesota, I mean, Tibbs knows Jimmy, like he knows, but I don't know if anybody knows this Jimmy. I think that's in terms of being at this level of basketball now, where no matter and if you told Jimmy today after the game that he's the best basketball player in the world, he'd tell you he sucks and all that because that's what he does. And if you tell him he sucks, he'll tell you he's the best basketball player in the world. He's contrarian, but again, he's unbothered. I do want to mention our sponsor here before we go forward, and then maybe I'll actually project a couple things here. Go to Prize Picks, use that code 5. FIVE, get that initial deposit matched up to $100. Again, the code is 5 because the network is 5. The show is 5. And again, you can do much more than just the NBA there. So there's, again, 2 NBA games tonight. Obviously, this series, Knicks Heat, and also the Lakers series, they're up 2-1. So all the players are already on the board. I just checked. But you can also play MLB, Stanley Cup playoffs. It's all on there. Use that code 5, FIVE. It is legal in the state of Florida, the state of New York, the state of California. So the key states that are going on right now. The only one, if you happen to live in Colorado, surprisingly, where everything is legal, Prize Picks is not, but it is legal in most states, like I said, including the state of Florida. And you can play the props up or down, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. The flex play, the power play, lots of options for you, but you got to use the code 5 and you got to deposit because that's how they will match your money. All right, so let's look at some players individually tonight as we go forward. I looked at Bam. He's 17.5 points on the board again. Seems like that's kind of where he's fallen lately. Let's use that as a way to get into him quickly.
Yeah.
Right, easy, 17.5.
Well, yeah, and I hate to, it'll bleed right into Bam Adebayo. This is where the prop that I love on Prize Picks, and use the code 5 to play. Julius Randle over 8 rebounds and Bam Adebayo over 8 rebounds. These teams are not shooting well. There's lots of missed shots. Take the overs on those guys. So I like Bam's over on rebounds, but I also think he could likely exceed that point total tonight. I think that this is also going to be a Jimmy game. But Bam Adebayo has to basically do what he did in game 3 again. And I think that eventually we're going to start to see that they're going to overpower this team, but they need that from Bam, and particularly on the defensive glass and keeping Mitchell Robinson off the offensive glass, which he's done a great job of.
Yeah, he has. But both locker rooms, they talked about Bam's physicality in the last game. And it does seem like some of the points are coming off of that too, but it is more sort of the backboards and keeping Mitchell Robinson off of them. I mean, but are we finally, I said this before we finally going to get the 25 point? No. Probably not happening.
I don't think so.
They don't need it.
Yeah, they haven't really. Like I think they noticed that they just need to shoot well with Jimmy. Like that's what it feels like. It's the blueprint. But I will say that I thought it was good on Bam the way, like we talked about it last year where like PJ was the dirty work guy, and you would see him yesterday, like the way he saved that game, just like doing the dirty work. Bam did the dirty work in game 3. And I feel like when you're talking about a guy that is like, we're talking about, can he get 18? Can he go over 17.5? And he's struggling offensively from night to night. It's like now he goes out there and he's been the best defender on the floor at all times. And then you go out there and you start doing the dirty work where you kind of crush their one outlook of offense. You mentioned them like being a grind offensively, Greg. Like everything is off offensive rebounding. Like second chance points has been their offense all year. So it's like if Bam can wreck that and just do his job down there, you're putting yourself in a really good position to win most nights against this team. So I think he just has to. I don't even know if the scoring matters, it feels like, in this series as much. But now things look different now. If they're shooting 20% from 3 and Jimmy's a little inefficient, which I just can't see happening, which I can't predict. I still, even when I say it, I can't predict he's going to be out there and look that bad. But if it did happen, like that's the one scenario. But if things are clicking, you need him to do that other stuff. And he did that in game 3.
All right, so who's the X Factor guy tonight? Because Caleb was quiet in the last game. We didn't talk a lot about Strus after the game.
Gabe.
It's Gabe again, you think? Because he was inefficient in the last game, but he did a hell of a
That's
job
why
defensively.
we need a bounce back, or else
Okay.
Gabe could start to lose confidence, and you can't afford for any of these guys to lose confidence. So I need to see a bounce back game from Gabe. And obviously, there's the Jimmy says, I want to make you 100% understand that you have no control of what's happening here, Knicks. That Jimmy, if he comes, Gabe shoots better and has a rebound type game, a bounce back, as Bam calls him, game. That's, to me, some of the keys I'm watching for tonight.
I think it's Kyle, by the way. I also look at the way I think it's Kyle and Kevin. I think the way that these vets, I think they're so important in the series. You look at the one game that they didn't play well, they lost. And we could talk about the fact they didn't have Jimmy, but like Kyle and Kevin were not great in that game too. Game 1, they were great. Game 3, they were great. Like I look at the way I thought that was an underrated element of that game 3. The way that Kyle came out there with, look at the lineup he's running with, and look how effective it was. What was it? It was Duncan, Caleb, Highsmith, and Zeller.
Yeah.
Like that would line up in the playoffs of the second round of the playoffs was producing positive offense. And it's like real credit to Kyle. He's like running the show.
And Spo.
Credit, yes, definitely Spo as well for creating some positive offense with that 5. But like Kyle looked like he had some bursts in game 3, Ethan. Like I don't know if you noticed that when you were watching. Like he was everywhere, like offensively. He was running around, he was getting by people, like he was doing those type of things. And Love, if he's shooting well and the way he's been kind of creating transition offense for a team that I didn't think had any hope in transition all year. And he's made them look like they have hope. Like he's actually playing them out in the open floor. It's like those two guys have sparked them in so many moments of these playoffs where it's like, if they have like a game 2 game where like Kyle doesn't have that burst or Love's not shooting well, it's like, that's where I think things go south. I think those two are so important.
Well, I mean, the way Love is affecting them in transition is they don't have to make passes to each other on the break, right? And
he's sticking around, in my opinion.
I think so too. I think so too. I think that's been pretty clear by the way his teammates have reacted to. Now, money will come into it, but I think Kevin at this point understands kind of where that's at. So I would be surprised. This is not a PJ Tucker situation. I don't think
they can offer him good money. That's the cool thing about the way that they signed him. So anyway, that's a conversation for
we'll have that conversation. I don't really want to do the prediction thing here because we got a pregame show later and a whole bunch of people are going to jump in on that. I think all of us kind of think that the Heat are in control of this series and something would need to go pretty drastically wrong. Which means that it will go wrong. But I'll just do this. I just want to set the table on this because it's going to be a topic conversation here, and then we'll close. Thanks to our sponsors, allproconstructionbuilders.com, and also Prize Picks. Use the code 5. I posted it on Twitter yesterday because I noticed it on Instagram. This is the way we work these days. It's from one media platform to another, social media platform. Tyler Herro has the cast off. There was no announcement made about this, but you and I have both heard, Greg, that he's ahead of schedule. He's at F1 without a cast. The rest of the team all went to the Panther game pretty much. He's at F1 without. That's a whole nother. I got to do another starting 5 on that probably starting tomorrow. No cast, and he's in the sleeve, and he's out in public again. He looked miserable when I saw him in the locker room. Feels like this is close. So I'll just leave this here, and I'll give you each 30 seconds to close on it. What do you do with Tyler Herro if he's back in about a week and a half, Greg? If they're still in it, which we're assuming in a week and a half, the way that things are going, they probably will be.
They will be alive in a week and a half is my prediction. My other prediction is that Tyler Herro is not ready in a week and a half. When I say he's ahead of schedule, that means that like if they can get to the finals, he can play in game 1 instead of having to wait until they come home for game 3. That's the type of ahead of schedule I'm discussing. I do not foresee him playing in any series, including the conference finals. But to me, considering that there's a path, it's worth noting that there's a chance that Tyler could play. There's my 30 seconds.
Well, here's the other thing about it. He has the kind of injury. He can still condition during all this. So people are worried about the basketball shape. Yeah. But it's not like he's going to fall out of shape here in 3 weeks. Plus, he's the type of, he's 23 years old. He's not Kevin Love. He's not Kyle Lowry. He's not just going to fall out of shape, any kind of shape, because he's not playing at all. So again, Brady, let's say let's say Greg is a pessimistic here, and let's say it's a game 6 against Boston in Boston. And because this has happened before. I mean, Udonis Haslem has come back in the middle of the series. Chris Bosh has come back in the middle of the series. Like, this would not be the first time for this organization.
Yeah, I think if in that scenario, and I think most scenarios, I think he comes off the bench. And I think at least at first, because you have to test him. There's no way that you're throwing him into the fire, especially with a team that's clicking right now. Just gonna throw him out there and say, figure it out, get shots up, work it. Like, they're gonna throw him off the bench. Let him play with Kyle. He could play on ball, off ball. They can figure that stuff out. But as much as you talk about the conditioning element of it, it's like this guy hasn't shot a basketball in weeks.
Right.
He has to rehab his hand back. Like, he has to get his hand back in like living shape, like just to operate in normal things. And then he can, and like there's like certain elements to it. It's like he's not going to shoot the basketball probably the same way that he shot a few weeks ago before the injury. So to that point, I think they need to test it, obviously, before they even bring him back. But I think they're going to bring him off the bench definitely in that scenario. And they could use it. Like, as much as we're talking about that bench lineup that is brought up around Kyle, like, that could run out of some gas. Like, it could eventually, when you're playing a Boston in a hypothetical situation, or you're playing in the NBA Finals hypothetically, and he comes back, that bench lineup might not be as effective as it is right now. We're going to need Tyler to get up shots in those lineups. So, I guess we'll see how this looks around that time. But I don't know. I don't have as much trust as like Tyler's just going to come back and all of a sudden he's dropping 20 points per game again. Like, I think it's going to take some time, at least when he comes back, to get his hand back in shape.
All right, well, I guess we'll find out from his Instagram. All right, thanks to Manny for producing. Thanks to Brady and Greg for joining. Make sure you check out 5 on the Floor from last night as well. That'll be up here on the channel. I think actually it is up on the channel. I think I put it up last night. And also check out Playback tonight. We'll be on there starting at 7:30. Brady, Alex, and I will be at the game. Greg will be hosting Playback and post-game show afterwards. Have a good day, everybody.